What happens when a Hollywood A-lister sits down for what's supposed to be a simple daytime interview, and one question shifts the entire mood of the room? Make sure to subscribe to Final Take Files, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is clapping as Sara Haines smiles toward the camera. "Welcome back," she says warmly. "We're joined right now by Academy Award winner Matt Damon. He's here to talk about his new film, and we're very happy to have you." Matt walks out to strong applause, relaxed, waving, giving a quick hug before sitting across from her at the table. "Thanks for having me," he says, smiling. "It's good to see you," Sara replies. "I feel like every time you come here, you've either just wrapped something big or you're about to start something even bigger." He laughs lightly. "That's kind of the cycle." The audience chuckles. Sara starts easy. "So tell me about this new project. You shot part of it overseas." "Yeah," Matt nods. "We were in Europe for a few months. It was intense but good. Long days. And your family traveled with you?" "For part of it. Not the whole time," he says. "It's always a balance." The tone is friendly, smooth. Sara nods along, letting him talk. He tells a quick story about forgetting lines during a late-night shoot. The audience laughs. It's comfortable. Sara smiles. "You've been doing this a long time now. Does it ever feel surreal?" "All the time," he says honestly. "I still feel like the kid who was just hoping to land a small role." "That's hard to believe," she says playfully. "You've been one of the most recognizable actors in the world for decades." He shrugs. "It doesn't always feel that way from the inside." There's a beat. Sara glances down at her notes. Her expression shifts, not dramatically, but enough that you can sense a turn coming. "You've also," she begins carefully, "been pretty vocal over the years about social and political issues." Matt nods slowly. "I have. And that's something I want to talk about," she says. "Because there's been a lot of conversation lately about celebrities speaking out. Some people appreciate it. Others, not so much." The audience murmurs lightly. Matt leans back slightly. "Okay." Sara continues. "There are viewers who say, 'I love his movies, but I don't want to hear his political opinions.' Do you understand that perspective?" He smiles politely. "I understand that not everyone agrees with me. That's fine. But do you understand the fatigue?" She presses gently. "People feeling like they're constantly being told what to think by people in Hollywood?" The smile fades just a touch. "I don't tell people what to think," he replies. "I say what I think." Sara nods. "Sure. But when someone with your platform says something strongly, it can feel bigger than just an opinion." The audience quiets. "Well," Matt says evenly, "having a platform doesn't mean I lose my right to speak." "I'm not saying you lose it," Sara responds quickly. "I'm asking if you ever question how it lands with someone who might be struggling financially, working 2 jobs, feeling disconnected from Hollywood." He pauses. "I grew up in a middle-class household," he says. "My mom was a teacher. I know what it's like to not have everything handed to you." "I'm not questioning your upbringing," Sara says, hands slightly raised. "I'm talking about now. You're incredibly successful. Some viewers feel there's a disconnect." A few audience members murmur agreement. A couple clap softly. Matt's tone lowers. "So because I've been successful, I shouldn't care about policy? About people?" "That's not what I'm saying," Sara says calmly. "I'm asking if there's ever a moment where you think, maybe this isn't my lane." The tension becomes visible. He leans forward slightly. "Caring about the country I live in is everyone's lane," he says firmly. Applause breaks out from part of the audience. Sara waits for it to settle. "But do you see how some people interpret celebrity activism as out of touch?" "I see that some media outlets frame it that way," he replies. "Yes. So you think it's the framing?" "I think it's easier to dismiss someone by saying, they're just a rich actor, than to engage with what they're actually saying." There's a ripple through the crowd. Sara tilts her head. "But can you acknowledge that sometimes celebrities do sound like they're lecturing?" He exhales. This time it's visible. Anyone can sound like they're lecturing if you already disagree with them. That's fair, she says. But when you speak at rallies or endorse candidates, you're stepping into a very real political arena. And, he asks. And politics is deeply personal, she replies. For people whose livelihoods are directly impacted. He nods slowly. Exactly. That's why it matters. She holds his gaze. But it doesn't impact you the same way. The room reacts with a louder murmur. His jaw tightens. You don't know how it impacts me, he says quietly. Sara stays composed. Financially, I mean. Financially isn't the only way policies affect people, he answers, voice firmer now. I have daughters. I have friends. I have family. I live here. Applause again, stronger. She waits it out. I'm not trying to corner you. It feels like you are, he says, not smiling. The audience gives a collective, oh. Sara straightens slightly. I'm asking what a lot of viewers ask. And I'm answering, he responds. There's a brief silence. The kind that stretches just a little too long for daytime television. Sara softens her tone. Let me ask it differently. Do you think Hollywood sometimes speaks before listening? He considers that. Sometimes. Sure. Everyone does. So there's room for reflection. There's always room for reflection, he says. But there's not room for silence just because someone's uncomfortable. That line lands heavy. A mix of applause and murmurs fills the studio. Sara nods slowly. So if someone says, stick to acting, your response is? He doesn't hesitate. No. A few laughs from the audience. Some clapping. You don't feel any responsibility to pull back, she asks. I feel responsibility to be thoughtful, he replies. Not invisible. The exchange is no longer light. It's measured, deliberate. Sara folds her hands. I appreciate you answering directly. I always try to, he says. But you can understand why this is a sensitive topic, she adds. Yes, he says, holding her gaze. I just don't accept that success cancels out citizenship. The audience reacts strongly to that. Applause, a few cheers. Sara gives a small nod, the tension still present but controlled. Well, she says carefully, that's a conversation people are clearly still having. And they should, Matt replies. There's a pause. The promo segment they started with feels far away now. And the energy in the room has completely shifted. This is no longer just about a movie. It's about voice, privilege, and who gets to speak, and you can feel that the conversation isn't over yet. The applause fades, but the tension doesn't. Sara doesn't look down at her notes this time. She keeps her eyes on Matt Damon. I want to stay here for a second, she says. Because when viewers write in, this is where they're divided. It's not about whether you can speak. It's whether you fully understand how it lands. Matt nods slowly, but he's clearly more guarded now. I understand that words have impact. Have you ever regretted speaking out? She asks. A small pause. Sure, he says. I've phrased things badly before. The audience murmurs. That's the first fully disarming moment. So it's not about silence, Sara continues. It's about awareness. I'm aware, he says evenly. But when you speak, she presses, your voice is amplified over people who might be directly affected by the issue. Do you ever worry you're overshadowing them? He leans forward slightly. When I support something, I try to highlight people who've been doing the work longer than I have. But your name becomes the headline, she replies. I can't control headlines. But you benefit from them. The audience reacts with a low ripple of sound. Matt's jaw tightens just a little. I benefit from being known as an actor. I use that visibility to try to help. Or, Sara says carefully, it can feel like Hollywood centering itself again. That lands heavier than the last few questions. You think I'm centering myself? He asks. I think sometimes celebrities unintentionally do, she answers. There's a pause. Not hostile, but charged. I don't wake up thinking about myself in those moments, he says. I think about the issue. But for someone struggling to pay rent, she says, hearing from someone worth millions can feel disconnected. The audience murmurs again. So success disqualifies you from caring, he replies, voice firmer now. That's not what I'm saying, she says quickly. I'm asking if you understand the perception. I understand disagreement, he answers. I don't accept that I should be quiet because I've done well. Applause breaks out from part of the crowd. Sara waits. Do you think Hollywood sometimes speaks before listening? He pauses, longer this time. Yes, he admits. Sometimes. That shifts the energy slightly. So how do you avoid that? She asks. By listening privately, he says. By doing the work when cameras aren't around. And people just have to trust that? She asks. They don't have to, he replies. But I'm not performing for approval. That draws a mix of claps and murmurs. She studies him. Does backlash ever make you reconsider speaking out? I reconsider how I say things, he answers. Not whether I care. Another wave of applause. Sara leans back a little. I appreciate you staying in this. He gives a tight smile. I don't mind tough questions. You seemed like you did, she says lightly. A few nervous laughs from the audience. I mind being reduced to a stereotype, he says calmly. That's fair, she nods. There's a quiet beat between them now, not explosive, but heavy. The promo energy from earlier is completely gone. This is no longer about a movie. It's about influence, privilege, and who gets to shape the conversation. Sara folds her hands on the table. And I think, she says carefully, this is why these conversations matter. Matt holds her gaze. They do, he agrees. The room stays tense, like one more question could push it somewhere even deeper. The silence hangs for a second longer than daytime TV usually allows. Sara breaks it. Let me pivot slightly, she says, though her tone suggests she's not really pivoting at all. Because I think what's underneath this is trust. A lot of Americans don't trust institutions right now. They don't trust media. They don't trust politicians. And yes, they don't always trust Hollywood. A ripple of agreement moves through the audience. Matt nods once. That's fair. Trust is low everywhere. So when a celebrity speaks out, she continues, some people immediately question the motive. They ask, is this genuine, or is this branding? That word lands. Matt's eyebrows lift slightly. Branding. You know what I mean, she says. Is it about conviction, or image? He exhales slowly. If I was worried about protecting my image, I probably wouldn't speak about anything controversial. A few claps. But can you see why people wonder? She presses. There's PR teams. There are agents. There are carefully crafted statements. There are, he admits. And sometimes that's because anything you say gets dissected in ways most people don't experience. Right, Sara nods. But that also creates distance. It makes it feel less raw. Less real. So what would feel real, he asks. She pauses. Listening publicly. Not just speaking publicly. The audience murmurs at that. I've done that, he replies. Not as often as you speak, she counters. That draws a louder reaction, a few gasps, some applause. Matt's expression tightens again. You're keeping score? I'm reflecting what viewers say, she responds. And viewers only see what's covered, he says. They don't see private meetings, conversations, the stuff that doesn't make headlines. But that's part of being a public figure, she says. People respond to what they can see. And I can't live my life performing transparency, he shoots back. The audience reacts, half applause, half tension. Sara leans forward slightly. No one's asking you to perform. But when you step into public debates, you're choosing to be part of that arena. I know that, he says firmly. And that arena is messy, she continues. People are struggling. They're angry. They're tired of feeling talked down to. I'm not talking down to anyone, he says, sharper now. But intent and impact aren't always the same, she replies quickly. That line hangs in the air. Matt looks at her for a long moment before responding. So what would you have me do differently? It's direct. Not sarcastic. Direct. Sara doesn't flinch. I'd have you acknowledge that sometimes celebrity voices dominate space that could belong to people living the reality. And if those people ask me to amplify them, he asks. Then amplify, she says. But maybe don't lead. There's a collective murmur. That's the sharpest distinction she's made. Matt nods slowly, but his jaw is set. You're assuming I lead. When your name is in the headline, you are, she replies. He shakes his head slightly. That's media culture. Not me. But you participate in it. And so do you, he says, gesturing lightly toward her side of the table. The audience reacts, louder this time. Sara accepts that with a small nod. I do. And that's why I think it's worth examining. The tension isn't explosive, it's steady, like a rope pulled tight. Let me ask you something more personal, she says. When someone says, stick to acting, what do you hear? I hear someone who doesn't want to engage with what I'm saying, he answers immediately. Or, she says carefully, someone who feels overwhelmed. He pauses. That's different, he admits. So can you have empathy for that person? I do, he says. But empathy doesn't mean silence. No, she agrees. But it might mean adjusting tone. The audience claps at that. Matt gives a tight smile. We're back to tone. Yes, she says plainly. Because tone shapes how messages are received. And delivery sometimes overshadows substance, he replies. Exactly, she says. For a brief second, they actually align. But it doesn't last long. Do you think, Sara asks carefully, that Hollywood as a whole sometimes confuses visibility with authority? That question shifts the energy again. Matt leans back, thinking. Sometimes, he says slowly. Yes. Visibility isn't expertise. The audience reacts, surprised at the concession. So then, she follows, why not defer more often? Defer to who? He asks. To experts. To people directly affected. I do, he insists. But deferring doesn't mean disappearing. And no one's asking you to disappear, she says. It feels like you are, he replies quietly. That line brings a soft "oh" from the crowd. Sara shakes her head. I'm asking for awareness of influence. And I'm saying I'm aware, he responds. They lock eyes for a moment. Not angry, but unyielding. The conversation has moved past surface-level disagreement. This is about philosophy now. About who gets to occupy space in public discourse. Sara finally leans back. Let me ask you this, she says. If tomorrow you woke up and realized your voice was doing more harm than good on a certain issue, would you step back? That question lands harder than the others. Matt doesn't answer immediately. The room is completely silent. If I believed that, he says slowly, yes, I would. There's a mix of reactions, some applause, some skeptical murmurs. But I don't speak recklessly, he adds. I think carefully before I do. Sara nods. I believe you believe that. Another ripple through the audience. He notices the phrasing. That sounded loaded. She gives a small, honest smile. It wasn't meant to be. But the tension is still there. They've both dug in, not shouting, not interrupting wildly, but holding firm. And the audience can feel it. This isn't a promotional interview anymore. It's a debate about power, voice, and responsibility. And it's building towards something that feels like it can't end politely. The air in the studio feels heavier now. Sara looks down at her cards for the first time in a while, then back up at Matt Damon. We're almost out of time, she says, her tone measured. But I want to end this in a constructive place. The audience is quiet, not tense in a chaotic way, but deeply attentive. You said something earlier, she continues. That success doesn't cancel out citizenship. Matt nods. It doesn't. And I agree, she says. But citizenship also means being open to criticism. He holds her gaze. I am open to criticism. You don't always look comfortable with it, she replies. A few nervous laughs ripple through the crowd. "I'm not comfortable being reduced to rich actor with opinions," he says. "That's not criticism. That's dismissal." "That's fair," she acknowledges. But some viewers feel dismissed too. There's a murmur of agreement from the audience. "Then that's a failure of communication," he says. "Not a failure of caring." Sara pauses at that. "So where does that leave us?" she asks. He leans back slightly, shoulders tight but voice steady. "It leaves us needing better conversations. Not quieter ones." That draws applause, solid, sustained. Sara nods slowly. "And better listening?" "Yes," he says. "On all sides." The tension softens, just a notch. She shifts the tone slightly. "Do you ever wish you could just show up, talk about a movie, and leave politics out of it entirely?" A small smile finally returns to his face. "Sometimes. Sure. It'd be easier." "So why not?" she asks. "Because the world doesn't pause when I'm promoting a film," he answers. "And I don't stop being a person with beliefs just because I'm sitting on a couch." There's applause again, louder this time. Sara looks out toward the audience. "I think what people respond to is authenticity." "Then that's what I try to give," he says. She studies him for a second, then nods. "Even when it's uncomfortable?" "Especially when it's uncomfortable," he replies. That line shifts the room. For the first time in several minutes, the energy feels less combative and more reflective. Sara glances at the clock off camera. "We really are out of time." A few audience members groan softly, not in frustration, but because they can tell the conversation could have gone another 10 minutes. "I appreciate you staying in this," she says sincerely. "I appreciate you asking directly," he answers. There's a brief pause, the kind that feels like both of them recognizing the weight of what just happened. The applause starts slowly, then builds. It's not explosive cheering. It's sustained, thoughtful. As the cameras widen slightly, Sara adds one more line. "These conversations aren't easy. But maybe they're necessary." Matt nods once. "I agree." The segment wraps. The theme music begins to rise. They shake hands, polite, professional, but you can still feel the charge in the air. And then the cameras cut. But that wasn't the end. Within minutes, clips start circulating online. Short cuts of the sharpest moments. "It feels like you are. You benefit from it. Success doesn't cancel out citizenship." On social media, the reactions are immediate and divided. Some viewers praise Matt for standing firm, saying he refused to be silenced. Others say Sara asked questions that many Americans have been thinking for years. Hashtags begin trending. Short clips rack up hundreds of thousands of views in hours. Comment sections fill up fast, some calling it a respectful debate, others calling it tense and uncomfortable. Media outlets pick it up by the afternoon. Headlines read, "Matt Damon pushes back during daytime interview," "Sara Haines presses Damon on celebrity activism," "Heated exchange over Hollywood influence." By the evening, panel discussions are already dissecting who was right, who interrupted more, who held their ground. Behind the scenes, sources say the backstage atmosphere was professional, not explosive. No shouting. No dramatic exit. Just a quiet cool-down before Matt left the building. But the energy lingered. Producers reportedly knew they had something significant the moment the segment ended. It wasn't scandal. It wasn't chaos. It was tension. Real tension. The kind that doesn't rely on raised voices, just sharp questions and firm answers. And that's what made it resonate. Because it wasn't about a movie. It wasn't even just about politics. It was about influence. About privilege. About who gets to speak, and how. And whether success changes the weight of your words. By the next morning, talk radio is replaying the exchange. Commentators are split. Some call it accountability. Others call it unfair targeting. The clip continues to circulate. And viewers are still arguing in the comments. Was Sara out of line? Was Matt defensive? Was it a necessary conversation? Or did it cross into something deeper? That's what makes moments like this stick. Not because someone won, but because nobody clearly did. The conversation didn't end with applause or a joke. It ended with tension and reflection. And now we want to hear from you. Was Matt Damon right to stand firm? Or was Sara asking the tough questions that needed to be asked? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Final Take Files for more real talk show stories.